It's a minute gone past the hour of 9 o'clock in the studios of Classic 105.5 and 105.9 on the FM band. Good morning to you, Grenada, Carriacou, Martinique, the rest of the Eastern Caribbean, to you wherever you are. It is the 27th day of the month of January. Literally. January is literally history. It is gone, folks. One done, almost done. 11 to go. The journey continues. I'm Jeff Cadore, and welcome to The Point. Today's edition, my guest this morning from the Royal Grenada Police Force, the Fire Department, Sergeant Pancho and Constable. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you? Welcome to the program.
Pleasant morning, and thank you. I am fine.
Good morning, sir. I'm okay for the time.
Wonderful. It's good to have you on the program, and allow me to say happy 2022. I know I didn't say happy new year. Happy 2022.
Thank you, and many happy returns to you and the staff at GBN.
Thank you. It's indeed a pleasure having you guys here this morning to discuss matters as it relates to the fire department. I think probably a good place. I know there's a lot that we have to discuss, Sergeant Pancho, but I'm thinking we can probably start by looking at the year that was.
Okay. Yes, so what I can say, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak about, is that in 2021, we recorded the lowest amount of emergency calls for the past 10 years. We recorded 286 emergency calls being reported to the fire department, as compared to the prior year, 2020, which had 379 fire calls. So we saw a reduction of some 93 fires, which actually means that at 24.5, almost a quarter reduction in the amount of emergencies being reported to the fire department. What is still a bit alarming, though, is the fact that we had an increase in structural fires. In terms of dwelling house fires, in 2020 we had 42 fires being reported, whereas in 2021 we had 52. So that is a bit of a concern for us at the fire department. The good thing about it is that we saw a significant decrease in terms of rubbish and bushfires. We moved from 150 bushfires being reported in 2020 to some 76 in 2021, and from 103 rubbish fires to some 73 in 2021. So that was we had a great decrease in those areas, and that actually accounted for most of the decrease that we had in fire calls in 2020. But as I said earlier, and alarming for us is the increase in structural fires. And this is something that we intend to actually gear our fire prevention strategies to look at going forward.
And we certainly will be going to look at the fire prevention strategy later on. But if we can, have you been able to ascertain factors, assuming possibly COVID may have played some part in that?
Well, I can't say that we can pinpoint and say COVID. The truth about it, though, is that we had a lot of persons home. So a lot of the times, in terms of bushfires and rubbish fires, even though the persons did set fires, they were there to monitor it. And that is one of the problems that we have. In a lot of instances, people set fire and they leave and they leave the fire unattended. And in a lot of instances, this is when fires get out of control and start spreading into the bushes. And then we are called in from the fire department point of view. What we did see, though, is that in 2020 we have a non-emergency response known as smoke disturbances. So that is where someone would call in to report that someone set a fire. The fire itself is not posing threat to their property, but the smoke is disturbing them. Right now, presently, we have a number of persons with respiratory illnesses, and the smoke from these fires is what affects these persons. So we have them calling into the fire department, and we go out and we respond and speak to persons relative to that. The law speaks to persons, informing persons, and we'll speak a little bit about the laws as we get deeper into the program. But the law speaks about informing persons, and if you inform persons, in most instances, they will take the precautionary measures. They might ensure that they're not home at the point in time you intend to burn. The whole aspect is being neighborly and so forth. So we had a number of smoke disturbances, but as I said, we did have a decrease in bush and rubbish fires. I'm a fire investigator, so I go out to investigate causes of fire. And a lot of the times when I go out to investigate, in the majority of these cases, these fires are accidentally caused. And when we say accidentally, it can be from electrical origins. It can be a child left unattended to play with match. We had instances where persons left candle burning and went away. So these fires we have where fans, electrical fans is one of the things that I've observed in a number of cases that has caused fires. A lot of the times in Grenada, we have a culture that you have an electrical fan and you have it running all night, and then you take it off, you go back the next day, and when you try to put it on, the fan decides it's not spinning. We have a culture that instead of getting someone to check it out, we would take off the face of the fan and we'll take our finger and hit the blade and it starts working again, but it's working under pressure at that point in time. The electricity is coming in, but we know electricity is heat and it's building up because the fan is not functioning properly. And what can happen is that after a period of time, it can overheat, go into thermal, run away, and a fire can be caused. So a lot of persons have to be mindful of those things, and whenever you have any electrical issues at home, whether it be a breaker tripping, your fan not working properly. We had instances where some persons left, students, before they went to school, they left the iron on the ironing board. It was a wooden structure, so walking in the house, it actually caused the iron to fall flat onto the ironing board, and we had a fire resulting in that. It actually damaged multiple structures. So persons have to bear in mind and do their last check before they leave home. Make sure all your outlets are off and so forth. So these are some of the things these are simple things, but we need to bear in mind that it can actually cause you to lose your entire home.
I know there's a culture of overloading of circuits. We normally hear that conversation close to the Christmas season. How much of a challenge is that? As we talked about culture that we have in Grenada, yeah, the rotation of the blade. Yeah, I think we all are guilty of that at some point in time of our life. You know what? I'm going to give it a kickstart. It has to work. It works all the time. It's going to work today. What about the overloading of circuits? And can you give us a breakdown, if you can, of those investigations that you have? Maybe those results still outstanding, Pancho?
Okay. As it relates to overloading of sockets, a lot of persons have the wrong impression also of overloading sockets. And normally, it's cultural that whenever you see a picture speaking about overloading sockets, you see several items plugged into one outlet. That is not necessarily the case, right? Electrical appliances have wattage. So let's imagine you buy a deep fryer, which needs, let's say, 1,000 watt. It's a 1,000 watt, but you buy a transformer that is 500 watt. Once you plug in that deep fryer, you have overloaded the socket. And persons have to be at it. And that's why when persons are purchasing transformers and those type of items, you need to know the equipment that you would be using, right? In some instances, we build our house to take a certain load. So most of what you had when the electrician came in and put in your fuse and so forth, your breakers in your electrical panel, you only had a refrigerator, you had maybe a toaster or so forth. But you bought a microwave, you added a fan, you only had a standing fridge before, but you had a deep fridge, and now you're putting everything back on that same breaker and you're not making any changes. You are overloading the socket, and that breaker would trip, right? And too much load on your electrical system can cause a fire. So persons have to bear that in mind. When you're making changes, sometimes in your bedroom, you add a ceiling fan and those type of things. You have to ensure that you look at the wattage and what breaker was installed in your electrical panel, because these things would cause a fire because you are overloading sockets.
10 minutes gone past the hour in the morning time. My guests this morning, Officers Augustine and Constable Augustine and Sergeant Pancho from the Royal Grenada Police Force, specifically the Fire Department. I want to say again, thanks to those of you that just joining us. You're probably chiming in via our social media platforms, and indeed we say it's a pleasure being here with you this morning. So we've gone through the highlights of the year that was, where we've actually seen less bushfires, officers, but an increase in structural damages, and certainly you hinted to the issue of the bushfires. The bushfires. Augustine, what can you tell us? I mean, on what are some of the stories you hear when you go out there to attend to one of those incidents, in terms of what people would say to you? Because I know you'll be surprised as to the stories that come to the people's mouth as to why they did what they did and what they thought they should do and that they didn't do. Well, what can you tell us?
Good morning again. I say when we go, normally as you say, we get all sorts of stories. Individuals say, officer, I was just trying to clear a little bush to plant something, and the fire would just get out of hand. And many a times we try to encourage people that if you so desire to burn, at least ensure that you have the relevant authority to do so, which is one, and to make put the necessary precautions in place, just in case that you do have that fire getting out of control, that you can, give some assistance to get that alleviated. Like have a bucket of water or have a running hose, so you can extinguish that, or at least you can put some sort of things in place. So in case you have to qualify a department, you will sort of mitigate that before we get there. This is all the things that we try to encourage people to do, because they will give you all sorts of stories, and we try to do this and we try to do that, and we cannot control it, and then the fire department has to come up.
I'm thinking, gentlemen, that the burning of any item should be something planned. Is that the kind of culture you want to encourage Grenadians? Plan it in advance. Don't just wake up randomly and wantonly decide, you know what, Sunday morning I have nowhere to go, let me just strike a match.
Oh yes, we do encourage that. As Sergeant Pancho spoke earlier on, that you will give information to your neighbors, especially in terms of agricultural burning, where persons will do burning or slash and burning practices for the property. Where we encourage you to go to the Ministry of Agriculture, have an extension officer come out and look at your property. They will also give you a license to burn. And with that license, we'll carry it back to the fire department, and then we'll have that sort of information to know that you are going to burn at that particular time, So the proper mechanism can be put in place for that.
There is Pancho, the administering of the license, and that's I'm assuming that persons would probably adhere to that. But while there is the licensing element of it, there are other conditions that must be met. Talk to me about that.
So what I can say is that we have been receiving a number of licenses at the fire department. So persons are being educated. They are heeding the call of the fire department to adhere to the law. So they go to the Ministry of Agriculture and a license is being issued. What is important to note is the conditions of the license. As I was speaking to a lady recently, earlier this week, she had a license to burn, and we were called in from the fire department because someone said that the fire is a big fire, there's a lot of smoke being emitted and so forth. Our officers went up, and when they got there, they realized that one of the conditions which speaks to burning in small heaps, because you're supposed to be burning in small heaps that is manageable, just in case that fire, the wind picks up and the fire is trying to escape from where you had that controlled burning, you'll be able to manage it. And that was not being done. They had big heaps and so forth. So it's just like another license. So if you you have a driver's license, but you go to get your driver's license and you drove an automatic vehicle to get your license, you have a restriction to only drive automatic vehicles. If you are found driving a manual vehicle, it means that your license is not valid. And it goes the same way with a license to burn. If you're not adhering to the conditions of the license, so one of the conditions is burning in small heaps, another is burning between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. If you're not sticking to those conditions, at the end of the day, your license has become null and void. All right? And so we want persons to bear that in mind. As Augustine spoke to you, must have a supply of water close by, just in case that the fire is spreading beyond the point. You have to clear around the area, right, to ensure that it doesn't go further than where you're burning. And these are some of the conditions, and persons must understand. A lot of persons think, one, they have a license, they can go ahead and burn how they please. But this is not what it is. The license gives you the authority to burn, but you must adhere to the conditions as stated in the license.
Augustine, are there penalties that can be enforced by your unit?
Yes, penalties can be enforced. If you go against the law, you can be charged and taken to the open court, where the magistrate can decide on whatsoever the penalty based on the law. So, and we have many times, persons have been charged and taken to the open court, and the penalty has been affixed to them, so they can go ahead and pay the charges.
Yeah, what I can say, the fine as it relates relates to under the Agricultural Fires Act, that is failing to get a license, would be $500 or 3 months imprisonment or both. That this is what the law speaks to. All right. One of the other challenges that we have is that of drivers competing with emergency vehicles. The law speaks to, under Traffic Regulation 26, subsection 19, it speaks to vehicles pulling to the left side of the road and giving way to emergency vehicles. And a lot of the times we have persons who is actually competing with emergency vehicles. They fail to pull to the left of the road. And what the law speaks to is that you can be charged for failing to pull to the left of the road. You can be brought to the court. In such case, the magistrate has the option of charging you up to $500. Or you can be given a fixed penalty ticket, which would be for $100, and you would actually have 3 demerit points on your license. The demerit points, there's a system that once you have 18 or more demerit points on your license can be suspended for a period of 6 months. So persons should bear that in mind also. But we ask that persons that, because you never know, it could be that we're responding to a fire at your home. It could be someone's life is in danger. It could be a bushfire that is spreading close to someone's property, and you actually obstructing the fire plants from getting there. It would actually delay our response time, and it can actually lead to persons losing property and actually to that sad occasion of actually life being lost.
So the license says to you that you are to burn in, I want to get it to a manageable size, right?
Yes, actually I can read what I have a copy of a license here, and condition 1 says that the fire be set in a small heap at a time, which can be managed. So and a lot of times persons they make several heaps and light all the heaps at the same time. That is not what the law that is not what the license is giving you. You take a small heap and you burn one at a time, so you'll be able to manage it. You can attend to it. Because a lot of times when you burn 2 or 3 heaps together, right, you can only deal with one at a time. If the wind picks up, right, we have something called spot fire. It will take a piece of, the wind can take a piece of burning debris from this heap here and throw it into the bushes over there. And when you're trying to deal with that fire, you have others burning, then that is a problem. So persons must understand that. And a lot of times the persons, as I said, they believe they have a license so that they can go ahead and burn, but that is not what. You asked about stories, and funnily, one day in this week, some of my men, they responded to a fire. And when they got there, they said that the gentleman was trying to flee the scene, but they met him. And he stated that he burned a maibo nest and the fire started. But there was 2 heaps of fire, 2 heaps on fire. If you burn a maibo nest, there will be one fire. You know, so you get all kinds of stories. And the thing about it, we ask the persons to be honest, especially when it comes to structural fire. If you left something on, say that you left it on. Because in doing investigation, a lot of times we have to interview witnesses and so forth. And then we're able to do further investigation. But a lot of times persons, I'm not too sure if they're afraid to say that they left something on or so forth. But it actually just speeds up the investigation process when you speak the truth.
What about a comment coming via social media regarding the aged wiring in many households? What is the law state? You build your house, and certainly from initially it is sanctioned and passed by the various authorities. But what is the advice you would offer to individuals? You built 5-10 years past.
Really and truly, I cannot speak to any exact law that speaks to having your property with the electrical installation being reinstalled or so forth. But we advise at least 5 years you have your electrical installation checked. So you can have someone come in and check the points and so forth. Make sure that you because I said if you're adding load, you have to ensure that you change your breakers and so forth. But we advise within 5 years that you at least you get it checked. Right? A lot of times we have structures where it goes from generation to generation, and at no point in time, because there was no issue, no one checked. And if you have wooden structures, you can have rodents and so forth chewing on the wires, and the grounding up of these things can cause fires. So it's always important that you do occasional checks of your electrical installation, because these are some of the things that can cause fires.
And I think it's important that we mentioned that routine maintenance, because I think people need to understand that your home is your haven. It's an investment that you've made. So the same way you would probably take your vehicle, you are encouraged. Because I know we have a culture, if it's not broken, we're not going to attempt to fix it. But I think that is a culture that needs to change. 20 minutes gone past the hour. I know the Royal Grenada Police Force, it engages as an active community relations arm. And I'm assuming that's the overall ambit of the RGPF. About what can you tell us in terms of the fire department, in terms of educating persons? So, for instance, I get a license. The license says in small, manageable portions. And I guess persons can always argue, well, what is small for Pancho might be considered a big one for Augustine, and I may then decide, hello, I've been burning fires all my life. Let's sort of public engagement that's put on by the fire department.
All right, Augustine, go ahead.
The past couple of years, the fire department has been embarking on numerous fire prevention surveys and fire prevention lectures, where the department will go to outreach in schools, homes, and maybe other different public forums where we will encourage people, give guidelines, give instructions as to how they should go about doing some things, what needs to be done, and how they can alleviate fires from being set and to reduce the amount of calls that will be coming to the fire department. So fire prevention surveys are one of the main programs that we use to assist in that light. Even though what we are doing here is part of our fire prevention lectures and surveys, so we will meet the broader spectrum of people, to pass the information on, so they will have a knowledge as to what to be done, how they should go about getting things done, so we can reduce the number of calls or fire incidents that will come to the fire department.
What about the use, Pancho? There's an appeal for the installations of fire hydrants and getting the public to appreciate its use and the value that it can serve to the public.
All right, so in terms of fire hydrants, we work in collaboration with the National Water and Sewage Authority, because they are the person responsible for the installation. Really and truly, what we as a fire department do from time to time, we do inspections and maintenance. And if there's any faults, we would report it to the National Water and Sewage Authority, who in most instances would work rapidly to get them back functioning. All right, we have done surveys along with the persons from NAWASA, and from time to time you see the installation of new hydrants in areas that you didn't have before. And a lot of the times these recommendations are made based on development in certain areas. Because the reality is that 20, 30 years ago, areas that were agricultural lands is not residential lands. So previously you had no hydrants in those areas. So from a fire department point of view, what we do surveys. And when we see the need for hydrants in certain areas, we make recommendations to the National Water and Sewage Authority, who would then take it on board, and they are the ones responsible for the installation of these hydrants. In some instances, though, in some areas, because the mains in those areas are small mains, it cannot take the hydrants, well, the big hydrants that is, really and truly. So to have the hydrants installed in those areas, you would have to run new mains, because you need a certain pressure of water in the hydrants to ensure that you can actually maintain fire suppression operations.
But I'm assuming that would probably require the establishment of policies and great collaboration between the RGPF fire department and the utility companies as part of overall development.
Yes.
I probably think that's the direction that we should be looking at.
Yes, we do have that networking with the National Water and Sewage Authority, and I can say that they work along with us very good. We have an excellent relationship in terms of those things, and as you stated before, you must have the infrastructure in place to ensure that you'll be able to have the hydrants. So as I said, if we make recommendations, a lot of times it will take a period of time before you get it done, because you do not have the infrastructure in terms of the big mains in those areas. So really and truly, we are working to get that done, because there are some areas that still are in need of fire hydrants.
But are you satisfied, if we probably take it on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of the installations of fire hydrants and understanding the need that they serve and recommendations that's been made? Are you satisfied that as to where we are as a nation, as a society, in ensuring that we're able to meet the needs and demands of what is in fact a growing society?
But there's always room for improvement, I can say that, right? However, in terms of the relationship and the response we've been getting from NAWASA, I would say that we are up at a scale of 8 up there, because we have been working together. But as I said, there's always room for improvement. There's always areas that are developing, and they would always need more infrastructure. But really and truly, the relationship between the fire department and NAWASA is actually leading to great things. And we actually had the mapping of hydrants being done by NAWASA. So we actually have a map at the station, so you can pinpoint wherever a hydrant is. So persons are going out. If you have a new firefighter in an area, you can actually look at that map, and when he goes to those areas, he's able to actually identify where those things are. So that is steps in the right directions.
And I'm assuming that mapping is based on by parish. You can tell how many hydrants is at what location, and that sort of thing.
Yes.
But can you give us figures though? So if I would ask, across the tri-island state, how many are there installed?
But I wouldn't be able to give you an exact number presently. As I said, we are still in the process of installing. All right. So to give a ballpark figure at this point in time would be unfair, and I don't like to give information that is not accurate. Right? Yes. But what I can say, normally I can speak to the tongue of St. George. There's about 30 hydrants within the tongue of St. George. And as I speak about the tongue, I want persons to bear in mind that the law speaks to not having any open flame in a tongue. Right, and a lot of times persons still want to go ahead and burn within the confines of the tongue, and they believe that the tongue is just Melville Street and those areas. But when you look at your address says the tongue of St. George, you are in the tongue of St. George. So that means that you're not allowed to burn any rubbish or so forth. You should try to put it in the trash, let the garbage disposal take it away. Right, and that the law was made in such a manner, because in tongues you normally have buildings very close. You have a lot of development, commercial activities, so you don't want to start a fire that might actually spread, and before you know it, you move from several buildings being engulfed. We have a history of what happened with courts and those fires in recent times. In 2019, I think it was the fire on Granville Street. You see when buildings are so close to each other, what can happen? And that is the reason the law speaks to not having any open flames in tongues. So I want persons to be at that. A lot of times people say, well, they're not in tongue, they're up in Tantine area or so forth. But it is part of the tongue. So I want persons to bear that in mind, and they must adhere to the law relative to that. So whether it be St. George's, Grenville, Victoria, once you're within the confines of tongue, you're not supposed to have any open flame. So you're not allowed to burn rubbish or anything like that. You're supposed to put it out so the garbage disposal can take it away.
It's 29 minutes gone past the hour in the morning time. My guest from the Fire Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force, Constable Augustine and Sergeant Pancho. We take a quick commercial break. When we come back, reminding you that you can chime in and be part of the conversation by calling directly into the studio 435-2041, or we continue to monitor our Facebook page and even our WhatsApp portal. To the point for today, the 27th day, of the month of January. We'll be right back.
Get ready for a season of Grooving Smooth and Live on GBN. Grooving Smooth and Live is a 1-hour performance gig every Thursday from 8 p.m. Feature performances from our local musicians and short interviews discussing all things musical. Every Thursday, a different musician and a different instrument will be featured, from the violin to the saxophone to the trumpet, guitar, and steel pan. Our local musicians playing, improvising, and educating us all genres of music. Join GBN with host musicians Matthias and Shireen, and a special guest every Thursday at 8 p.m. It's Grooving Smooth and Live on GBN.
It is important to know what your road signs and markings means. The zigzag lines means you should not park in the marked area. Parking is allowed inside the solid white lines on the edge of the road. Remember, look out for pedestrians. Pedestrians, be sure the vehicle comes to a complete stop before crossing. These can save your life. These tips can make our roads safer for all users. Be safe, be seen, be smart. A message from the Traffic Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force.
Thank you. Welcome back to the program, to the point for the 27th day. If you're just joining us, my guest this morning, officers, that's Constable Augustine and Sergeant Pancho from the Fire Department. We have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. Are you alive?
Yes, good morning. I'm trying to find out what's the requirements or the procedure for having a hydrant installed in a particular area.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Gentlemen?
Yes.
Inquiry regarding the requirements for the installation of a fire hydrant. I know you spoke of there's policies as a collaboration between yourself and NAWASA, but there's a question coming from a caller.
In terms of requirements, all right, I can't say that there's any specific requirement to say that allows for fire hydrant. However, a lot of times we do assessments and we look at the risk. We look at the development in those areas. All right. We also look at a lot of times we look at the infrastructure, as I was saying before. So when we collaborate with NAWASA, we look at whether or not they have the means in that area that would allow the installation of those hydrants. But persons from time to time, they would visit the fire department or they would contact NAWASA and speak to why they think that a hydrant is needed in those areas, and then that actually kicks in the process of getting the assessment done. So if someone you're in an area and you believe based on the risk and threats you have within that area, it could be commercial activity, residential structures being constructed or so forth, because a lot of times before the hydrants were in areas that you had a lot of residents, you had commercial activities and so forth. And as I said, where you have the infrastructure in terms of the mains. So if you realize there's a need because you have increase in all those things, then you can actually contact the fire department or NAWASA, and then assessment can be done so that we can look at the installation of a fire hydrant in that area.
Thank you very much. A caller on the line, you're a live caller. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Cadore. Greetings. And by the way, can your guest hear me? Is he close to you or through the virtual system?
I can hear you.
Very well. Greetings, Mr. Pancho. Now, the question I shall pose to you doesn't really necessarily mean that you can resolve it, but I'm throwing it out for what it's worth. Houses burn. Accidents, deliberate through arson and otherwise. Properties are set alight for whatever reason. But there is the issue of the smoke generated from burning, particularly indiscriminate burning of plastic, of tires, of other materials that are nocive. The smoke, nocive, injurious, harmful to the population. As I said, you may not be able to resolve this, but I want to sound the campaign note that we have to control indiscriminate burning in this country. I suffer with a respiratory problem, and I had to put on, just imagine, a gas mask inside my own house because I'm being killed slowly by smoke. What do we do? When shall we start to control this indiscriminate burning and destruction of the health of the population? 1.7 million people around the world die as a result of air pollution because it enters your bloodstream and it destroys your organs. It's like, when shall we start, Mr. Pancho? What can you say to this? What does your department, or what can your department do, should I say, to help to combat this major problem in this here country? Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Gentlemen.
And it's always good to to hear you, and all the best for 2022. Myself and Mr. Rolo have been in contact from time to time, and from time to time he sends out advice and so forth to me. All right. Thank you for your question. And what I can say is that from the fire department point of view, what we would do is enforce laws. The reality of it is that we respond based on information. So yes, there's indiscriminate burning. Persons are supposed to adhere to the law. We spoke to the Agricultural Fires Act with persons getting a license. Under the use of fire, persons are supposed to inform their neighbors that they're going to burn. And it's totally unhealthy to be burning tires and plastic bags. And I always tell persons, in terms of plastic bags especially, you're already paying for garbage disposal when you pay your electricity bill. It's already there. So put out your plastic bags, let the garbage trucks go with it. Burning plastic is very, very unhealthy for human and also for the ozone layer. We are looking to go green, and I want persons to bear that in mind. Right? A lot of persons, they just think that they need to burn, and that is the reality of it. And Mr. Augustine spoke about our campaign. And a lot of the times when we go out and speak, Mr. Rulo, and we have community forums, we go and we speak into the converted. Because a lot of times when we go to those forums, the persons who turn out are the elderly persons who are already safety conscious, and persons from the NADMA committees and so forth that comes out. The persons who actually need the information, they don't come out. We are on the television right now, and I'm sure there are persons who were looking at programs before, and when they saw persons coming to speak about fire, they change the channel. We do radio programs, and the same thing happens from time to time. Most of the time we are speaking to the converted. Look, Mr. Rolo is someone who is always safety conscious, and he's one of the persons calling in today. And that is one of the things, one of our grave concern. What we are doing is we produce pamphlets which we distribute. From time to time, we actually looking at different hazards. We're looking at the hurricane season at one point. During the Christmas season, we're looking at Ulitile, so we do a lot with electricity and baking and so forth. And for this period coming up, we're looking at dry season fire prevention, so bushfires. But really and truly, from a fire department point of view, what we'll do is enforce the laws. Last year, we had more than seven persons being arrested and charged for indiscriminate burning. So that is what we can do from a fire department point of view. But as I said, we can only respond based on information. And that is where we get the calls. And again, the law speaks to when you make a complaint, a lot of times it depends on what you require, because you're the complainant. So if you say to the fire department, I require a warning, we'll go and we'll warn the person. But if you say you want to take the matter to court, then we bring the matter to court. So that is what we can do from a fire department point of view.
Thank you very much. 22 on to the hour. We have a caller live on the line. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, good morning to all of you. And in fact, I'm very happy to hear the last part of that answer to Mr. Rolo having to do with the law, because that is my question, but more on or along the line of how happy are you actually with, let's say first off on a scale of 1 to 10, with the existing laws in Grenada, when a person is charged and the response of the court, do you think it's satisfactory enough? Or do you think more could be done? And if more, how much more? To make persons feel more responsible because they have been charged more seriously, and that charge has led to something happening in actuality to discipline them for that, and maybe make it more likely that they won't go and be repeat offenders, or the people observing will be less inclined to commit such fire-related crimes. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Gentlemen?
On my point, I think more could always be done, I mean, with every infringement, we always, think that the punishment can be a little bit harsher or a little bit steeper to sort of prevent persons from being repeat offenders or to continue to do the same thing over and over. But legislations have to be changed, the laws have to be amended, so that can happen. I mean, it is what it is. We work within the ambits of the law. But there's always room for improvement where we can, make the punishment a little bit more steeper so persons can refrain from, what they continue doing.
And I'm assuming, Pancho, that's a conversation that has to be extended to the Ministry of Health as well.
Yes, well, to be honest, at this point in time, we're actually looking at ways that the legislation can be improved for recommendations to be made, to be sent forward. So we're actually looking at having legislative change being made. As we all know, it is a process. So we make recommendations. Once the recommendations are deemed to be fit, then it would have to go to the drafting process and then go through cabinet and parliament and parliament and cabinet and so forth to actually be passed as laws. However, when someone lights a fire, if that fire is indiscriminately set and it causes damage to other person's property or so forth, that person will be held liable, and they can be made to pay compensation. So whether it be medical or to property, that can be done. All right, persons have to bear in mind that you can actually, as I said, it depends on what you want. So you're calling, you say this person lit a fire, it is causing discomfort to me, I want the matter to go to court, because the law allows the matter to be brought to court. We can actually arrest the person, or we can take the person by summons. The person goes to court. You get a conviction in the fact that the person actually lit the fire without doing what they're supposed to do. So there was against the law. And what you can do is actually use that ruling to go to court. You can actually sue the person for compensation and so forth. So it's a process just as any other court matter, right? Going forward, those things can be done. So really and truly, there are avenues to actually get the recourse that you require, without just speaking about the minimal amount that the person may be charged. But in terms of compensation, medical, property, and so forth, that ruling can be used, and you can make a claim in the High Court for compensation.
Quite interesting. It would be interesting to know, though, how many individuals are aware of that. That, of course, there's always fallen at this recourse that can be taken. And 17 minutes on to the hour in the morning time. We go back to the telephone line. And Classic, good morning. You're a live caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Yes, go ahead. You're live. I'm
very, very pleased to listen to this thing this morning, because I live by some neighbor here in Mount Hartman, and them is a proper nuisance. I tired complaint to the fire service. I am tired complaint to the fire service, and there is not a lot done. Every time you contact them, they burn part very, very often they burn. And every time you contact them, they get a license to burn. They haven't got any agricultural land here. They just burn everything they put their hand on. And when I spoke to the lady, she told she want to smoke me out. That's what she told me in these words. And they say that they notify me whenever they're burning. They cannot notify me when they're burning because I don't talk to them and they don't talk to me. So, but my next step is now, I have tried many occasions and I can't get them to stop. So what I'm going to do now, as I told the fire officers, I will take them to court. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. And I understand. I'm privy to that situation. However, what I can say, you're saying that they do not have agricultural lands. So is it an issue where you can speak to the Ministry of Agriculture? Because if persons are getting a license to burn on agricultural lands and they do not have agricultural lands, then we have an issue there, right? And that is something that can be looked into.
Quite interesting indeed. 435-2041, that is the number on the inside. We go back to the telephone lines. Classic, good morning. You're alive.
Yeah, good morning to you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to ask the chief of the fire department of West Camp, please. What about now, if I have police officers who don't work lands and garden and they don't burn a lot of bush fire too? So I want to ask the question, if they have to get a fire, I am likely to burn the bush fire.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter who you are or what profession you are. If you're a police officer, you are a prison officer, you work in the Ministry of Agriculture, the law speaks to the fact that once you're preparing land for agricultural purposes or the land is being used for agricultural purposes and you need to burn, then you have to get a license from the Ministry of Agriculture. So it doesn't matter who you are, you have to adhere to the law. The law is no respect of persons. Everyone is supposed to adhere by the law. And I have seen license for police officers who I know are engaged in agriculture before.
The conversation of licensing gentlemen, does it just apply? What is if a fire is being set for, and the primary wants to recreational purposes, for example, campfire? Brownies, they have campfires and all of these sort of things. What is the regulations that are in place for that?
Okay, what I can say is that once a person wants to, not the normal procedure is that persons would apply to have these activities, because these activities are recreational, as you said. And what would normally happen is that application goes to the Commissioner of Police. He would then send a copy to the fire department, and we go out and we do an assessment of the area that the person wants to set the fire. We also, so we look at the area, and what would happen is that when they're actually setting up, so if the area is safe to have that fire being done, we say, okay, yes, we approve it. However, on the day when you're setting up, a fire officer has to be there, and during actually a fire officer would be there to monitor that fire. So if we get there and on that day the wind is very high, we say, okay, you wouldn't be able to set that fire today because the risk is too great. All right, so that is what normally happens when you have those situations.
We go back to the telephone lines. Classic, good morning, you're a live caller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Chief. Wonderful, thank you.
I realize that we're not tapping into the effective appliances and extension cords and adapters that we put into the car that basically can start house fires in limit on and go. So we need to tap into this, because many times we have house fires, and those appliances and the outlets, the transformers, effective transformers we put into the country. Matter of fact, cheap appliances, basically. So we need to think about that also.
Thank you very much, caller.
I didn't quite get your comment, to be honest. Can you assist me, Mr. Cadore?
He was making highlight of the fact that restrictions and control need to be put in place as to what type of appliances, effective appliances that's probably brought into the country. I think it speaks to the general concern of policies, guidelines that must be, first of course, be in place and ensure that they are actually followed. I think we need to get into a culture of being able to appreciate, and I think we highlighted that quite early. Yes, as we develop as a society in terms of our personal being, we need to also advance our thinking as well. And I think that has to be a general conversation that requires the RGPF, the Fire Department, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, that takes the conversation to school. The general challenge, thinking that you gentlemen would agree with me, it takes a shift and change in thinking. So, for example, the previous caller that spoke about his neighbor saying want to burn him out. Mm-hmm. You're not burning out your neighbor. You're putting your own life at risk just the same.
Yes. I think person need to actually take responsibility for personal safety also. Right, and that is very, very important. People need to be more safety conscious. Just yesterday, someone met me. Officer, I want to speak to you. So I slowed down in traffic because the traffic doesn't flow in very fast. And she was walking on the side and she said, "Officer, I had a dream about fire and my house is very high. What can I do?" I said, well, in a case where you do not have an emergency exit, you can get a rope ladder and those type of things. And she said, I looked it up and I was just thinking and I wanted to know. So if you realize that you have a safety concern like that, then you need to put things in place. Buying an extinguisher to put in your home is something that you need to do. The regulation doesn't say that there's no law that says as a homeowner you're supposed to have an extinguisher, but it's part of your safety. A lot of the times, and I speak to a lot of persons, especially in the rural areas, persons are building structures in areas that are not accessible with the fire appliance. So you have persons, they actually have traps, so they have footpaths to get to their homes. And when we get there, a lot of the times we have to remain on the road and watch the house burn on the hill. So in such a case, do you think it's prudent to have an extinguisher or a fire alarm? Because a lot of the times, persons become aware of a fire when the fire has already burned half in the house and starts spreading to the outside. If you've had a smoke detector or fire alarm, it would alarm sometimes you're in the backyard and something happens inside and you only get to know it when you actually start smelling the smoke and it's actually coming out of the house already. So these are things that person need to take responsibility for. Your personal safety. You work very hard. You build a house for $120,000, $130,000, but you find it difficult to buy a smoke detector that might cost you just about $50. So these are the things that we have to bear in mind, because we need to take responsibility for our personal safety and the safety of our family. Simple things as having an emergency plan at your home. You're at work and you have an emergency plan, you have drills and so forth. You're at home where your family is, the persons who are most dear to you, and you do not have an emergency plan for home. You get out, let's imagine you wake up in the middle of the night, the house is on fire. You rush outside and you do not know where your children are because you never had a conversation with them about safety and what to do in case we have a fire in the night. And we get there and you do not know if your children is outside. Sometimes you go back in looking for the children and the children are already outside. But if you had a plan in place, those children would be in an area that is safe. You get there and it makes it easier for you ensure that your children are safe. And when we get there, we know that we only deal with a fire instead of having to go inside to look for a child. So persons, we need to take responsibility for our personal safety, and we need to start thinking, and we have to be more neighborly, to be honest. Right, as the caller was saying, we need to be more neighborly. We have to. It says that what we want for ourselves, we should want it for others. You don't want somebody just burning and the whole idea about people not speaking to one another. So you're not speaking to your neighbor. You get up in the morning, you realize your neighbor washed all the white clothes on the line. You go and light a fire. How is that rational? How is that just common sense thinking? And you expect persons to be agree. And when they come to the station, you say, oh, you never call the police for you, and you didn't expect them to go so far. But you are doing something that actually is causing a lot of discomfort to them, and people have to understand these things. We need to be more considerate.
I agree 100%. We have a caller that is on the line. You're a live caller. Go ahead, please.
President, good morning.
Yes, good morning to you.
Quite an interesting program this morning. A little follow-up from what Mr. Rulo said, and the other man after Mr. Rulo. Especially in Beirut. When you go in Beirut pasture, you have I call it no name, no warrant. You have a certain guy, anytime you sit down there or you're walking or whatever to release your stress or whatever, he just constantly burning stuff and putting thing in it. And that is not right. All the time he don't burning stuff. And when he see people, certain people, he's just going and light fire. I want to know what they could do about that, because that is not right. All the time he don't burn his stuff, and he have an issue. He does hardly thing with people because he's a confusion maker. So anytime he sees certain people in the pasture sit down, he's running and light fire. I want to know what they could do about that, because that is not right. And people have respiratory problem. For me, I have thyroid and all kind of thing, and I can't stand the scent. And he doing that on a regular basis. All the time he don't burn in nothing. As soon as he come and he see somebody there sit down, he running and smoke up. So you have to leave from walking and go back.
Okay, thank you, caller.
Okay then.
We didn't have that information before. Right? So because I normally tell person, a lot of times the person say, well, the police in the station and look thing happening up the road. If we're not up the road at the point in time, well, if there's persons on patrol, they might encounter these things, because police officers, we have mobile patrol, we have foot patrols from time to time. But if something is happening out of our area that we are in at that point in time, we only get to know about it when someone reports it. So just the same way you're speaking about Beirut. I work at fire headquarters, and I can't recall ever having a report in that area of someone burning indiscriminately. So we can only respond when persons give the information, and once you call in and you report these incidents, we would have officers respond and deal with the matter accordingly. So if you ask, as I said, if you ask for a warning, we will give a warning. If you want to take the matter to court, you would be expected to give a statement, and then you would have to go to court just the same.
Wonderful. 5 minutes on to the hour of 10. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Good morning. Good morning. I must commend BBN and the police department for this particular program this morning, as it relates to the indiscriminate lighting of fires, to the annoyance and the disturbance of people. I wish, however, that there would be another program by the police on the issue of noise, not only in vehicles but in the neighborhood, when you want to rest and noise invading you inside your house because of loud music played by indiscriminate neighbors. I I hope a program will come on soon. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, sir.
Right, and we have the Noise Pollution Act in place to deal with the issues as it relates to noise. Similarly, you need to call, well, you wouldn't call the fire department in that case, you would call the police station, right? And persons would come out and respond to those reports. As I said, the act is there, and I'm sure Mr. Cadore, in future, as he said, the Community Relations Department is the department responsible for organizing these programs. So they can always look at what is being asked for and have persons from the department come and speak to those issues.
Well, while we're on the issues of speaking, you gentlemen would realize we have not even touched. We haven't looked. I know we plan to talk about the upcoming dry season now, and we're not going to start because we're literally out of time. But just to go back on what is it you're making reference to as having a family plan, and I think very often the concept of family plan comes up when in terms of the Hurricane Atlantic season. But I think it goes back to that shift in culture. And as a comment that was made, just a simple knowledge of knowing where your main switch is in the house.
Yeah.
Simple as it may sound. Understanding those things, gentlemen, you would agree, it would probably go a very, very long way. And going back to the issue of culture, with our adapters, we get into the habit of using foil as it is. And I think we've had that conversation before, Pancho. Persons figure, you know what? I mean, they're going to bridge it, and they tell themselves it has worked.
You're bridging a fuse that costs $1 and cents, that costs some sense, You understand? These things are really unfortunate. And I think a lot of times, as I said, persons don't think of the safety consequences that can occur when they do these things. So, as I said, if we just start having a better safety culture, and we look at what can be possibly caused by our actions, I think it would go a long way in a lot of things that we have practiced by culture. We can actually change because things are not the way it was before. Everything is actually evolving. And so our mindset around safety has to evolve just the same, right? And I welcome persons to call the fire department at any point in time you want advice and so forth. Feel free to call, right? You spoke to the dry season, but just the same, the month of February has been designated Fire Month by NADMA, the National Disaster Management Agency. So within that time, we do put on a lot of programs. A lot of programs now, due to COVID, are being done virtually, right? But we ask persons to stay tuned, listen to the information, share the information, right? And that is somewhat one of the things. We cannot reach everyone when we come on these programs, but you can actually continue the sharing of that information by speaking to your colleagues at work, your neighbors, their community groups, and so forth. From time to time, persons actually invite us. There's community activities, and they invite us to come. We speak for 5 minutes. It's just some basic fire tips, and it goes a long way because a lot of times you hear persons saying, I never knew this, and I never knew and that. All right. And as we spoke about the family plan is not just about hurricane. It should be a comprehensive disaster plan. So you speak about fires, hurricane, earthquake. Your plan is supposed to include all these hazards. Something as simple as a gas leak, a 20-pound cylinder leaking. Persons are supposed to know what to do because you're not supposed to put on a light switch, because when you put on a light switch, a spark is given off, which can actually ignite the fumes being released by that gas. So these are some of the simple things. I said safety, it starts very small. Right, and just by doing those simple things, you can actually alleviate major emergency. Because we're not just the fire department; we actually we deal with all hazards.
Let me just ask you briefly, because we definitely out of time. So the conversation of the dry season we will live on. I'm assuming I will talk to your superior. I'll talk to my boy. I'll talk to him. I'll make a personal request to have you guys back next week so we can continue this conversation. But the issue of safety, emergency plans, escape routes, should that also be part of a conversation when one is constructing their home? And even that within the context of how the work.
Definitely.
Augustine?
Yeah, definitely. Building codes, all that should be incorporated, within a particular plan. So you have, in some places, a building cannot be built without a fire exit or a fire escape, So, as you say, all that has to be incorporated when you constructing a new home, along with the plan and where can be a muster point and all those other. So those things have to be identified, and in the proper consultation and building and planning of those homes or those structures.
Actually, at present, we use the OECS building code, so persons can go up online and look for it. This is what the Grenada is operating under presently. So if persons want guidelines as it relates to the construction of buildings, they can look at the OECS building code.
Looking at the building code, and what about workplaces?
Yeah, workplaces. A lot of the times we go in and do inspections. We actually ask that persons have emergency plans in place and so forth. A lot of the times, to be honest, some institutions already have in place in its policies the fact that they should have fire drills and so forth. There's a few financial institutions that ever so often, maybe twice for the year, we do evacuation drills with them. We go in and we train their staff. There's refreshers and so forth, right? So we want it to be a policy of most places to have these things in place, right? The fire department, we accommodate it. We go, we do the training, we supervise evacuation drills and all those things. Because at the end of the day, as I said, we want a safety culture, right or wrong. But most of the times, especially for license in terms of refreshment house and so forth, part of the criteria is that their fire safety audit is done, and the fire department, we go out there and we do that audit and provide a report to the Inland Revenue Department before a person can get a license. So in some cases, the regulation actually speaks to strict adherence to local fire standards. Right. In other cases where it doesn't speak to that, we are actually admonishing and advising that persons have a safety culture in place and put in place policies to ensure that they can actually safeguard their investment and their property and staff.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. 10 minutes, it's about 2 minutes gone past the hour of 10 o'clock. We want to say thanks to you, Constable Augustine and Sergeant Pancho of the Fire Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force. For those of you that's viewing, that participated via our online portal, Eulin Alexander, Alistair Warwood, the Ingrid Bourne, the regular contributors, we say thanks for being part of the broadcast. Until then, so long, everybody. Loves you. Have yourself a great day.